Good evening and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. Familiar faces you're seeing again this evening, but slightly in a different context this evening. I think the boot is on the other foot, shall we say. Sai is sitting in the hot seat and I'm the one directing all the questions, which I know it's going to be difficult for him because he does like to interrupt and he likes to jump in. So, it's slightly different. But before we start, obviously, the series is all related to mental health. If anybody is affected by anything that is discussed during the show this evening, there's a banner going across the bottom with some contact details for a couple of different charities. But Signposted Cymru have agreed to partner up with us to be our mental health partner. So if anybody does need help or support, the contact details for Signposted Cymru are there. But without further ado, good evening, my friend. Good evening, Simon. How are we doing?
Good, mate. Thank you. Very good. Chugging along, innit?
Chugging along. Busy as ever, mate, yeah?
Yeah. Craziness. It's non-stop, mate. But, it's the way you want to be, innit?
Which we'll get that into a bit further. Obviously, I know you haven't been well over the last couple of weeks, and obviously we'll probably talk a little bit about that as we get into it.
No doubt.
I know the doctors have advised you to take it easy, but I don't think I can always remember that saying you said to me going back months ago. I think I'll sleep when I'm dead or something like that, and that's always stuck with me. That have.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's one of them things. As I got older, I just sort of it feels like wasting time. Like I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I think as you get older, you appreciate time a bit more. And like when I was younger, I used to sleep a lot. Like now, I barely sleep. Like you stay in bed till like 12, 1 o'clock. It's like half a day's gone. It's crazy. Like when I think how much I get done between, I know, like 5 and 8 every day in the morning. It's mad. Like, but. It's just it's one of many things in it that you kind of learn and appreciate more, I guess, as you get older.
Yeah, fair play. So we'll dive straight into it then. Obviously, I've known you now for probably around about 3 years, I think. Obviously, I started off watching your shows just before and during COVID, I suppose. And obviously, our relationship has blossomed ever since. And now I'm doing podcasts for you and this, that, and the other. Obviously, we've talked about various mental health shows and things in the past, and we've both been involved in different shows and things. And I know we've talked about, you doing it with me and, it's been put off and off perhaps. But why now? Is there any particular reason why you've decided now is the time?
I think for me, it was I was very wary of the kind of age that my kids were at, and I didn't want to talk about certain things until they were a bit older, because even though maybe when they were younger, they didn't watch all my stuff all the time, they do they do go check out what's dad doing, or I know my middle boy will tune into stuff, even though he doesn't like football. He'll tune into different things that I do just to have a look. And I was kind of wary of that. But also I was and I still am to a certain degree, even though a lot of the stuff that I'll probably end up talking about is a long time ago. It's not all a long time ago. And I'm also wary of things like sponsors and potential, collaborations and things like that. And I always worry that people will be put off when they hear certain things or they hear whatever, and it's just all these different things. But I decided I'm at a point now where I just think I'm me. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to do it my way. And if people don't like it, it is what it is. But most importantly, my kids are all, 2 of them are adults. One of them's sort of 16. So if they're a bit older and they can understand sort of context to things and understand that you know, it's stuff. A lot of it is stuff which happened a long time ago.
Yeah, fair play. And like you said, keeping it from your kids, and no doubt, obviously, your boys have got friends as well, perhaps, who tune in and watch shows, and
Yeah.
youngsters now can be blinking horrible, and like you said, if you've done this 2 or 3 years ago, perhaps, when he's going through that early teenage years, and things come out then, like you said, safeguarding.
Yeah, like I help coach my son's football team. I know, like, I sponsor my son's football team. They've got the podcast logo all over it and stuff. And, I just was very aware of. It's difficult, isn't it? Because, like, you want to discuss stuff and you want to be as open and authentic as possible when discussing stuff. But equally, you can't not be aware of the impact it might have on other people, and like I said, the thing with sponsors and stuff like that is at the back of your mind all the time. But equally, I think what has helped with that is a lot of the stuff which I do now is more football related, even though I obviously you do this mental health series on the channel, and mental health, we've had a variety of different mental health series on the channel as a whole. So it's not like I'm avoiding it, but it was just, I had to make sure that it was all right to talk about some of the stuff. And like I said to you earlier, mate, some of the stuff which I might talk about, my missus might not know, or like, because I don't talk about it. I've never talked about it. It's not something which I like to go into. It's not.
No, it's quite interesting. Obviously, we've been talking throughout the day, and like you said, I like to think I know you quite well. A lot of we've met each other a few times. A lot of our meetings are over, podcasts like this. But yeah, it'd be interesting to hear some of the things you have to say, and if it can help one person, our chat tonight, then, mate, and it's job done, innit?
Yeah, and I think that one of the most important things to me since I started doing podcasts, because when I started doing podcasts, it was very much I wanted to have a mental health element in it, and from the very first sort of podcast I ever did something on mental health, sporadically throughout that time, there's always been people who will message me, and they'll either say they're struggling themselves and they really appreciate that we talked about this subject or that subject, or they'll just reach out and say, they enjoyed it or whatever. But like, for me, that's the most fulfilling thing you can have. Like, I had a message the other day after the show on Sunday, talking about Cardiff, and it was such a complimentary message. Like, it was so nice. And, I'd be lying if I just said, like, I didn't appreciate it. But we did the Glenn Leuven's event the other day, which was sponsored by Anxious to Zen, which is a company which looks after people with sort of mental health issues or when they're in crisis and stuff like that. And there was a guy, I'm not going to say his name, but there was a guy at the event who was going through some stuff and reached out to the sponsor guy and took him aside and opened up his, kind of let everything out and told him all the issues. That made my night, mate. And that night was a wicked night. It was, so everything went smoothly. It was successful. It was happy. It was a very enjoyable night for me, from a, like a business point of view, if you like. But the most satisfying and most happy thing for me was that this guy who was struggling, and it kind of, what I gather is his mates, they knew that he was struggling, but he didn't want to talk about it, which is such a common thing with blokes. And him reaching out to that guy, and I don't know if he's followed up. I will probably try and find out, but like, that was just, it made my night, mate. Genuinely, yeah. I was so happy about it. And I guess the point I was making is those people who've reached out over the years because of different mental health content which we've done, whether it's mental health in sport with different people talking about different issues like footballers or whatever, and other athletes, or even the series I did way back where I just spoke to people who had different mental health conditions. So we spoke to someone with DID or manic depression or all these different things. And it just makes people, particularly men, if that can make any one person just feel like they're not on their own, then I'm all about that. Like I'm really, that makes me happy. Like, you know.
Spot on. But after the first one we done with Signposted Cymru, I know one gentleman got in touch with him straight away, and he's been having support over the phone, and he's really, he really thinks it's been beneficial. So, it's fantastic. So, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. Doing these types of podcasts does help, and hopefully tonight now sometimes, obviously, I know we know each other, so it's all, hopefully it's not as daunting, but sometimes it's just nice to get it off your chest and speak to somebody that perhaps you wouldn't normally speak to somebody, have that type of conversation with.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I just very quickly on the Signposted Cymru thing, I was just saying to my missus, like, it's nice now that when those people do reach out to me or to you or anyone on the team, that we've got somewhere now where we can direct them and we know they're going to get looked after. Not that, I think I used to point people towards Mind and stuff like that, not that they wouldn't do a good job looking after their people or whatever, but it's nice to have a association with a charity where we can say, no, phone this number or email this guy or speak to this guy, and they'll look after you and they'll help you and they'll give you the support you need. But sorry, what was the question you asked me?
I can't remember now. You've thrown me back.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I think, look, ultimately, right, is I don't talk about the things, like, I'll talk about stuff which pisses me off and stuff like that, but I don't talk about the things which have had a long-term impact on how I am today and how I deal with stuff today. And it's interesting because I like to think now I've got a pretty good handle on when my mental health takes a bit of a dip or when I'm feeling bad and when I'm struggling a little bit, that I can kind of take a step back, or I can speak to my mate. And me and my mate, we kind of drag each other through some, because he's quite similar to me. He goes through periods or days or weeks where he's struggling a bit, and we kind of drag each other through a little bit. And obviously I speak to people like you or Rob or the boys on the team and stuff. But generally, it's funny, like Rob's reached out to me a couple of times and he said, like, how are you? Are you doing all right? Are you okay? And my answer is pretty much the same all the time. Yeah, all good. And I'll just change the subject. And it's like, I'm very good at giving people advice. Like, if you came to me and you were struggling, I'd have all the advice and coping strategies and things in the world that I would like to think would help you. But generally speaking, I'm sure you're the same as well. Like, you give people the right advice and you'll say the right things. And that was another reason why I wanted to sort of do tonight, is because it's one thing saying, yeah, if you're struggling, speak to someone, or if you've got an issue, speak to someone, or do this, or contact this person, or reach out. You're not alone. But then I felt like I needed to, or not back it up, but like almost put my actions alongside my words and show that, yeah, look, even though I'm apprehensive about talking about certain stuff because of all the reasons I said earlier, like kids and family and blah, 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 I'm still going to do it, because I think we've lost over the years, like I've lost too many people to suicide and things like that. Like, it's ridiculous. The amount of people who I, like, just from school to now, who I know or have known, whether that's really, really close or, just knew who they were when I was younger or was friends with younger, and you just got. But the amount of people is outrageous, mate. How many of those people are not with us anymore because they couldn't cope, or it's
so
ridiculous.
Very quickly before I start firing some questions at you, just so gives people a bit of an idea. Where did you grow up, Si, and what was your childhood?
So I grew up in Rhodri, which is like North Cardiff, I think, and my geography is notoriously bad, but like North Cardiff down by Taftwell and all that sort of. And I used to spend my days Rada, Penter, Krieger. And look, like I've said quite openly as well, is like, as a teenager, I was a nightmare, man. I was an absolute nightmare. And the problem is without sounding big-headed, I was very, very good at football, and I was very, very good at cricket. So I played like representative sort of stuff with them, but I was a nightmare away from that. It's like I turned up to play cricket for Glamorgan. I must have been like 13 or 14 maybe. And I turned up with bright orange hair, and it was like my second game or something for them. And they pulled me aside and said, look, that's not how we do things. And I didn't care, because I was doing lots of stuff which I shouldn't be doing. And, it's weird. Like, so me and my dad, when I was young, like getting into football and all these different things, we were really close. He used to go to every single thing, every single football match or every training I would do. He would take me everywhere. And then as I got into my teens, we had a really, really strained relationship. Like, he'd still take me to football, and he would make sure I went to training. Like, I used to play football for the FA School of Excellence, for like South Wales FA School of Excellence. We used to train in Forest, and he used to make. I wouldn't want to go, and he'd come pick me up from my mate's house where I was having a smoke, and he would drag me there and take me to training, and kind of that. And we used to clash a lot. Like, go on, yeah, it's fine.
But don't it make you appreciate now what your parents done for you when and obviously it was there wasn't 2 cars in a household back in the day type of thing.
Yeah.
Like, I got the 3 kids as same as you, they got stuff on every day of the bloody week. But it makes you appreciate now what our parents did for us back in the day.
Oh God, yeah, mate. God, yeah. And like I said, I was really close to him. And when I was a teenager, it was very strained. We had a few scraps, and because I couldn't. He tried so many different things to get through to me, or not even get through to me, to try and like build that relationship back with me. And when I say he tried everything, I mean he tried everything, and I mean to the point where he was aware that I was smoking things that I shouldn't be smoking at that age. Shouldn't be smoking them because they're technically illegal, but like, they are illegal. It's not technically.
I was going to say there's nothing technical about it.
But I was smoking a lot, and my mental health then started to take a turn. I didn't know that then, but I see it now. Like, so I was seeing like a therapist and stuff, and they said, I think they thought I had like manic depression or something like that.
You go back 30 years, I suppose. There's not much difference in age between you and I, and I don't think you could probably get away with saying some of the things. It would have been, oh, you would be all right, man up, this, that, and the other. I think that was quite a common thing back in that time, wouldn't it? But nowadays, with mental health being as prevalent as it is then.
Like, it is, like, you're right, completely. Like, it was, especially for men. I think for teenagers, when I was a teenager in the 90s and that, like, I think it started to change a little bit. Like, there was certainly points where my parents were very, very worried about me, because I would go like days without really speaking to them, and just not like ignoring them, just not speaking, probably because I was stoned most of the time, in fairness. But like, from their point of view, I had gone from like this outgoing kid who loved football, loved sport, loved cricket, was very like happy, to then all of a sudden teenager, and I was like listening to the Doors and just very kind of depressing music, and I was not really talking to people, didn't want to go anywhere. And I know like it's a lot of that is like part and parcel of being a teenager, but my moods were very bad, very low, and I did some stupid stuff to myself, which probably, well, it did definitely contributed to then like the school being worried and my parents being worried. So I got sent to a therapist down in sort of just between Fairwater and Canton somewhere. And Like
So
that
when you
was.
say that,
Go on.
sorry to elaborate. And
Oh, that's what I was
what
going to say.
that
Sorry, mate. So yes, you are right. Things had changed, but obviously I had got to a point where I still got sent to a therapist. So I don't know. Maybe it was because it was extreme, or maybe it was because things were changing a little bit. I couldn't say with that, but like it was certainly an attitude for men to kind of get on with it, wasn't
Yeah, 100%.
Go on, sorry.
I was going to say, so when you mentioned there then about doing things to yourself, was that self-harm then, was it?
Yeah, I did a lot of stupid stuff. Like I had sort of cut myself, and I used to like just take tablets and stuff like that. And like it was like, and because I used to smoke as well, that was a problem, like, and I was getting worse. I was getting more aggressive as well because of teenagers, not in like a way where I was necessarily would have hurt anyone in my family or anything like that, but I was clashing with my dad all the time. And we had a few scraps where he just couldn't get through to me, and he tried all sorts of ways to get through to me. And there's one particular instance which I don't really want to go into detail with, just because of how people from the outside would judge him. But like basically, he tried everything that he could to get through to me and to rebuild that relationship, and it didn't work. Something happened where he tried to help and stuff like that. I ended up in a police cell overnight, arrested, and he ended up in hospital with chest pains, and 2 weeks later he was dead. I didn't know, which I do now, is that he had been going down to Land Dock for like heart scans and stuff like that. But for about so as you would, like as you do as a parent, but for probably 15, 20 years. I mean, my missus would be able to tell me probably. I blamed myself for that. Like I thought the reason he had died was because
you give him a smack. Like.
He tried basically. It's what I can talk about. I think I might have talked about it. Basically, he knew I smoked weed. He used to smoke cigarettes, but like a chimney. But he had never done any drugs or anything like that. And his idea was my mum was going out for the evening. I remember like yesterday, Man United were playing Monaco in the Champions League on ITV, and he said, get some weed, and we'll have a smoke and we'll watch the football. And I'm thinking, oh, this is great. This is going to be amazing, because I'm a teenager and I'm so naive and I'm so selfish that like I just think, oh, this is going to be great. But he's never smoked before, never taken a drug in his life before. So he's spun out immediately, like off two tokes, panicked, which is then spun me out and panicked. I phoned 999 for an ambulance, but in the process where I was like spinning out and freaking out and stuff, because I thought he was going to die there and then, and blah blah. They've said like, what's been going on, what's happened. I've telling them. The police have turned up with the ambulance, gone to arrest my dad, thinking that he's like a dealer who sells weed to teenagers and kids, and I've gone off on one, and I think I smacked the copper or something. I don't know. But I don't really remember a lot of that bit, because where I span out, it just became obviously adrenaline and stuff. But yeah, I spent the night in a police cell. He went to hospital and he was fine. Like he had just spun out, but panicked. And because of the situation, it kind of just spiraled. And
did you ever get to find out, why he wanted to do that with you?
All right. Because he wanted to make a connection with me. That was it. Just wanted to. He had tried all sorts of. Like it's not like he just jumped straight to that. It's like he had tried all sorts of things over that sort of year or two before, because I was a nightmare. He had gone 2 weeks before that. He had gone on football tour with me, so he'd gone to football tour, and because he was there and because my mate's dad was a coach, we were like 15, sort of coming on to 16. When they all of the rest of the team went to bed, we were allowed to go back down in the bar, me and my mate. We had like a sneaky pint with him. And that's what I mean, is like he was trying everything that he physically could to make that connection with me. But for a 16-year-old whose life just revolved around smoking and partying and girls and football and stuff, obviously in the middle of exams and stuff like that, to then all of a sudden just be like, boom, he's gone. And the day he died was like, obviously it's still like the worst day of my life, but like, again, I was sat in the living room in my mum's old house, just watching the wrestling on the TV, like sat in my dressing gown, much like I do today, like, you know, sat in my dressing gown, like just wherever. And my mum, they were decorating, my mum and dad upstairs, putting some wallpaper up, I think, in their room. And he just shouted down, she shouted down, Simon, phone ambulance. I sort of phoned or pressed 999, but didn't know what I was phoning an ambulance for because I hadn't been upstairs. So my mum sort of came down and said, right, go sit with your dad, like, and I'll speak to them. So we kind of switched. And yeah, he's laid on the bed, clutching his chest. And yeah. That was the last time I spoke to him.
Yeah.
It's but yeah, I for years just blame myself for it. That was like, as far as I was concerned, that was why he had died. Because the police told me afterwards that the weed that we'd had been laced with whatever. Like, I don't think it was. I think they were trying to sort of scare me, and they were trying to scare me, and like, where did you get it from, and all this sort of shit. But like, for me, it was like, it's just
and you wouldn't you? You put all the blame on yourself. But I just wanted to pop this comment up because obviously that's a bit tough to talk about. Rob says, sounded like a top dad. Si would be so proud of you, buddy. Don't make him cry now, for fuck's sake. Let's just jump into some of the comments then before we go on, just to have a little look. Was your evening, Paul? Evening, Jeff. Evening, Rob. Evening, Graham. Rob said you lived in the posh part in Rada. Good evening, Howell. Paul says, got to thank you for the show, Si, giving people like myself a platform to talk and be involved. I suffer with PTSD, anxiety, and depression, and social anxiety. Also, the WhatsApp group, which has helped me. So, that must make you proud when you see comments like that and think, this all come from something I've created, type of thing.
Yeah, it's mad, mate, when you think like it was just like an idea I had and just it's grown into this mad thing, which is like spawned off other stuff. But most of all, like, it's the community which has been created, I think, is the most rewarding thing. Because I see, like, when we do the live events and I see all these people and they'll either know each other or they're like, oh, I'm so-and-so from the chat and this. And, like, it's very humbling, like that is, because ultimately it just came from an idea of trying to do something because my physical health was so bad and my mental health was so bad at that point, which obviously came a lot later down the line. And it's good, mate. It's good.
Yeah. Jonathan Davis asked the question: does weed help with Crohn's like it does with epilepsy?
I wouldn't know, mate, because so around that sort of time where I was an absolute nightmare, I had experimented with a variety of things. Magic mushrooms was one of those things. The first time I did magic mushrooms, we walked up the Garth Mountain and was picking them and stuff. And then
that's a beauty of a mountain to walk up as well, isn't it?
It is beautiful, but we walked up it picking mushrooms. I'd never done them, so I didn't know what to expect.
What did you walk up and fly back down?
Well, no, the people who I was with, my mates who I was with, they'd done it before, apart from me and my mate, who's also called Simon. But we got lost whilst we were tripping up the mountain, and took me fucking hours to get home. And I had a proper, like, it was horrible. Just say that, like, and ever since then, every time I smoked weed after that, I just got super paranoid, like even with my closest friends, and I couldn't hack it. And not long after that, probably a year or two, I stopped smoking weed. And I haven't smoked weed since. I use CBD for my pain and my Crohn's and stuff. So I use CBD oil, and I also use the equivalent of whatever it is. Like,
is that a big help for you as well?
Yeah, it's good for sleep, and I think it helps my Crohn's and stuff, and anxiety, stuff like that. But like, I think the other thing I just wanted to add on with my old man as well is, like, I was 16. I was already not doing well before that. Like, obviously, I'd been taken to a therapist and all this sort of stuff. I was still playing cricket for Glamorgan at that point, and I was still playing football for the School of Excellence. I don't think I ever went back to either after he died, because he was the one who used to make me go. Obviously, after he died, my brother was 10, I think, or 11, something like that. He's 4 years, about 11. All I cared about was the fact that my mother was on her own with me and my brother. And my brother was, and I just took that on, and I put everything into making sure he went on and did his exams and went to uni and all that sort of stuff, and making sure that she was all right. But I never dealt with any of it until, I don't know, maybe like my late 20s, 30, maybe even my 30s. I can't remember exactly, but I never dealt with none of it. And it was a big issue, mate, because what happened I stopped smoking weed because it made me paranoid. But I started going to the pub. So I was going to the pub, and I worked in the pub. And then there was some lads in there who I sort of knew and I was friendly with, who were in the year above me and older, who were old enough, and they were going in, they used to go to the pub every day. This was back when pubs were proper pubs, like. So I started off working in the restaurant, and then I would just go out and go with my mates and stuff afterwards. And obviously I started drinking, started going in the pub, and that was the beginning of what I would call is my drinking years, which was fast and furious, because I think from 16 to about 24, I'm trying to think when my oldest was, how old I was when my oldest was born. 24-ish. But in that time, like, my drinking got way out of hand. I was drinking every day. There was point towards the end where I was drinking before I go to work in the morning. I didn't drive, so I didn't have to sort of worry about that at that point.
And sorry to jump in as well, but that drinking then was, looking back now, was you drinking to mask?
Oh God,
problems?
Yeah, 100%, mate. I wasn't the majority. I wasn't a fun drunk, mate. I would get pissed with my mates. The first few pints would be good, and then I would go and sit on my own in the pub and not speak to no one. I just sit on my own and just like wallow in guilt and bitterness and whatever. But in that time, I also discovered ecstasy and cocaine. Wasn't really, like, I did have a little bit of a period where I did coke and stuff, like, for like regularly, but like pills was me, like, because, and I looking back again, like, I look at it and it's because, like, when you take them, it's all like happy and love, and you feel like everything's amazing, like, you know, and yeah, it was.
What did it used to feel like the days after that? Then, as they say, the come down can be horrific.
Yeah, it's rough, mate. Rough, fucking horrific is the word.
And did you find yourself kind of getting back on the wagon then to try and not get back to where you was, but to kind of?
Well, I would always drink to take the edge off everything. So like Mondays would be horrific because I would finish work on a Friday early at 12:30 to go out on a piss, and I wouldn't go home until Sunday night when the pub's closed, and I would have very little sleep, obviously very chemically induced, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like just horrific. But I would still go to the pub on Monday night and watch the football. I'd still like be doing those things, but when I was on my own, I was contemplating and thinking about, you know, horrific shit and different stuff. None of it was particularly positive. And like that pub I referred to was the Rad Rams. That was the pub where I worked and I grew up in, really, like, because we used to go there with my family. Then I worked there. Then I drank there. Then it closed. And I went to Tenant, which is the other end of Rada, which is actually where I met my missus, but that's a separate story. But from the Tenant to my mum's house, there's like it's houses now, but you used to walk up like the fields, and then there's a motorway bridge which goes across to where my mum's house is, like 100 yards up the road from like the other side of the motorway bridge. And if you imagine someone who's like, it got massive issues with depression, with guilt, is an alcoholic, and is taking lots of chemical as well on the weekend, particularly. When you're walking back from the pub on a Monday and every night you're just staggering home, feeling like you're just like feeling like you're an inconvenience to your mum, because I'm say like 18, 19, 20, you know, this sort of age, and I'm looking at, like, I think I'd moved to Roath, gone and lived with some people I worked with for like a year. I don't even think we lasted a year in there, and then I ended up moving back in with my mum. But my mum had said, "Don't move out. You're not ready. You haven't got the money to do it." Blah blah blah. And effectively, what I did is I moved out for like 9 months or whatever, and just came back with a buckload of debt, because the people who I had lived with kind of stitched me up a little bit and had put like all the bills in my name and that, because I was a bit naive and all I cared about was getting pissed. Like, just that was all I was bothered about, is like, oh, I'm going to live in Roath. There's loads of pubs and students around here. There's loads of girls around here, and it's close to town. This is going to be phenomenal. Moved back with my mum, and then like I used to walk over that bridge, mate, and like all I would think about is my brother's going to end up going the same way because he sees me doing it, because I'm back living there. My mother is like disappointed, and she blames me as well. But even though she'd never say it, she's bound to blame me. She knows it was my fault. And then also, like, you know, I'm 19, 20, and I'm working in a pub. I haven't got a proper job. She's not going to be proud of it or whatever. And it was, I look back, mate, because I'm scared of heights. As in, only in the last probably year have I been able to drive over the Severn Bridge without having a full-on panic attack. I do not like it, but I'm all right now, actually. It's been good recently. But like, that bridge I've been scared of since I was little. Like, since I was little, never used to like going over it. And I would walk. There's like a longer way where you can walk down to the bottom of Morganstown and then go on the main road. But it takes like 10, 15 minutes longer to get to the Tenant. And I used to walk that way a lot because I didn't want to go over the bridge. But on the way back, when I was drunk and off my tits, I used to walk back that way. And I used to just have a little wander, and I'd have a little look over, and I look back and it makes me feel sick, like, because I remember once I tried to I didn't have the bottle to stand on it, like on the railing in the middle. Even off my tits, I still didn't have the bottle to do it because of the height. But like sort of as it goes, like more towards the end of it, if you get what I mean, where there's like a slope, and I'd be like trying to balance on the top of it because I was just like, oh well, if I fall or I lose my balance, what's
even
matters?
Going back then and looking back on it now, did you think you had issues mentally then, or you had mental health issues back then, or you put it all down to the drink and the drugs?
I think I just thought it was all
related to
hangover, come downs, stuff like that. Like I never really. I think there was probably points. There were definitely points where I think I realized there was something wrong with me, because when I used to sit in the pub on my own, and I had some really some wicked conversations with like just random people who are just regulars in the pub, like old men, middle-aged men who were just in for a pint, and they would see you or see me just sat on my own, and they'd come and just check on me, or they'd see if I was all right. I broke down in tears once in the toilets of the pub, fucking 5 o'clock on a Sunday evening or something. I was just went to the toilet, and a friend of mine, well, actually, he used to be a head teacher. His name's John, and he got me through. I got to say, over those years, when I look back on it, made sure I got to cricket and all this sort of stuff. But his son, is about, I think, probably 5 or 10 years older than me, just happened to walk in the bathroom, and I think he just asked me if I was all right or something. And I just burst into tears. No reason, just one of them things. But yeah, I was a mess, mate. I was a real mess. And
so what put stop to the drinking then, mate?
I met my missus. Pretty much that was it. It was weird. So the Radar Arms closes, and started going to the Tenant. And I used to go to the Tenant anyway, but when the Radar Arms was there, that was home ground, and then the Tenant was more of a bit of a treat, now and again. We had a Wild West brawl in there one day. That's mental. But anyway, but yeah, so she was working on the bar, and it just kind of met her, and things progressed. And when she was pregnant with my oldest, I was kind of very determined that I wasn't. I think us as a couple, because she was young. She was 18 when she felt pregnant, 19 when she had him, and I was early 20s, 22, 23. We were both very determined that we weren't going to become another statistic of teenage pregnancy breakup, and just be this sort of, just another sort of young couple who have a baby and break up and whatever, and kids are raised by a single parent and all this sort of stuff. So we were in those early that early period, we were very determined with that. And I gave up smoking almost immediately for the time she was pregnant. I did stick to it pretty much as well. I think towards the end, I had started having the odd one in work, and then before I knew, I was smoking again. But she changed my life, because from the moment I saw her and spoke to her and stuff, there was never anyone else. And and this is what makes me laugh. You get these random messages done you off bots, and people. I don't know if you get them. It might just be because of the podcast, but you get these random messages saying check out this link or whatever, or check out my OnlyFans, or I don't know, whatever they are. And I always chuckle to myself when I see them, because I'm just of all the people, you're barking up the wrong tree, because from the moment I met her, I was obsessed. I just loved it. Like, and I think when you've got that to cling on to, it makes a difference in those times where you are like struggling. And I think, look, I'm not going to pretend it was easy. I like to suddenly stop going out. I had cooled down a little bit on like the drugs by that point anyway, but I was drinking a lot. Like I'm not saying I was drug free by then, because I wasn't, but like I was nowhere near what I'd been like in the few years before that.
Was Becky aware of the drugs then, or was that something he was hiding?
Yeah,
from
she knew. No, she knew. Like when she met me and stuff, and she knew that like I like to party, and I think, you know, I'm sure I'd have to ask her, but I'm sure she would have also seen the after effects of it, like the hangovers and the come downs and stuff. And ultimately, mate, I didn't want to be one of them fathers who's like still taking drugs and still drinking, like he's single. I wanted to be a good father, and I wanted to be a good partner at the time, and that was enough of a motivating factor. And look, like I say, I don't drink. I can drink if I want to. Like I will sometimes, if we're at my in-laws and we're staying over at like Christmas and stuff, and I'll have a glass of wine with my father-in-law and stuff. But generally speaking, I don't drink. Like I didn't drink at the event the other Friday, which I think, you know, I'm quite happy not drinking. It doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
And I'm better for it. Like it just, I think I'm just not good with drink and drugs. I don't think it brings the best out of me. And obviously I'm an old man now anyway, but like back at that time, all my focus was on being a good father and being a good partner and stuff like that. And I think that's sometimes what you need to give you that kick up the arse, or that kick just to do it.
I don't know what's happened. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, mate.
I don't know what's happened to the camera. You'd have to bear with me.
Yeah, it's all right. Just I can hear you, mate, anyway.
Yes. So I don't know what's happened to the camera, but
just switch it over to the laptop camera on the settings.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. There is a couple of questions in there I want to do. Go back to. Howell says, respect to you, Si. It's very difficult to be open and honest about inner thoughts and voices. The same man up drives me nuts. Here's a good one. What do you do now, Si, to help with any struggles you may be going through? From someone who still struggles from time to time, I try my best to keep myself busy to avoid quiet time.
It's interesting, right? So there's a few things. Number one, me and my mate kind of get each other through by just texting each other and saying, I feel like shit today, feeling bad today, or whatever, and we'll pick each other up. We'll remind each other of how we deal with it and how to deal with it. And I think it's like, so for me, it's that, having him there, but also one of the most important things for me is trying to keep busy and keep my brain constantly doing stuff. So for me, and I can only speak for me, like for me, that's what I need my brain to be busy, because the second I'm not busy, my brain works against me, if that makes sense. So like my brain will be literally going, you're a piece of shit. You're dragging your wife down, like you've been a cripple since 2008. What are you doing? You've let them down. You've let your kids down. Your kids have never been on holiday abroad. All these different things, which obviously it's like my brain working against me, and that sort of stuff. The only way I can stop that, and even today, the only way I can stop that is to keep busy and keep my mind active, which is interesting because that also works the other way. So sometimes I can feel like I'll do too much and then I'll get stressed out, and then it goes the opposite effect where I need to go, whoa, take a step back and kind of get my head together a little bit. But yeah, my advice is keep your mind active, because ultimately, and look, one of the things I struggle with now is that I can't do the exercise that I would like to do. So I can't go to the gym and go for a run. That really is difficult because I can't physically do it. So in terms of advice, keep your mind active and keep your body active. If I was able to, every time I have those dark days or those dark mornings or whatever, like where I feel low, I would just go to the gym and punish myself in the gym, like, because after you do that, you feel better. But yeah, it's kind of, that's my advice anyway. No, that I would take advice from me.
I've had to connect the webcam now. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, the camera was all over the place. I'm glad I was. Rob have just alluded to. Glad I had a pair of shorts on. So apologies there, technical issues. So I do apologise, but thanks for kind of bailing me out there by carrying on talking. Much appreciated.
No worries, mate.
Obviously, I've got to know you, and I know some of the kind of struggles you deal with on a daily basis at the moment, Si. But going back, obviously, I know a few years back you had a horrific car accident. Is that a thing now that you think that's a big thing of why you struggle and things at times?
I don't know. It's a weird one because so for years, even when I sort of stopped drinking or stopped drinking as much, or like where my drinking wasn't a problem, I was still had issues. Like I still had a real problem with depression and stuff like that. And like, I was so happy when I was with my boys when they're growing up, or my missus and stuff. But I still had that, like, just my voice, my head works against me all the time. And I think eventually, I can't remember how it came about, but I eventually went to see a doctor and kind of said this, that, and the other, and probably explained. I think I said to them as well, like, I've used drugs before and I've drunk before. Like, I've tried all these different things to sort of quiet that voice down, and it's not working. And I went and seen a therapist again in my, like, I must have been like my early 30s or late 20s or whatever. So I went to see this therapist. I only seen him 3 times. The first one was like an introduction. We kind of talked about different stuff. Obviously, talked about my father and she asked me to write a letter to him, which, that was hard. And I did it though, because I was like, what's the point in going if you're not going to do what they ask you to do? Otherwise, what's the point? You're wasting their time and you're wasting your time. But, typical kind of bloke thing, innit? Like, why do I want to write a letter to, he's dead, like, whatever. But I did it. So the first one was the introduction. Second one wrote the letter, or like advised me to write a letter. And then the third one wrote the letter, read it out loud. And that, it definitely helped, like 100%. So that was the first step to me starting to realize, I think, that I had things that I needed to deal with. And there's other stuff, family stuff and things like that from when I was younger and stuff, which I probably still done.
Mad, really, because when you think, early 30, you're talking 15 years after your dad had passed away. Yeah. It's taken that long to actually realize, and it's mad.
You think of the damage, mate, the damage that it did to my mental health over that period is astounding. Like, really, like, caused all sorts of issues. And like I've said before, people think sometimes, I think, like, I'm just saying it, like, but if it wasn't for my missus, I wouldn't be here. Like, it's as simple as that, because like, she changed everything. And I think, like, it's easy to say that, but I know it because I was walking over bridges on the fucking barrier, or like doing stupid stuff. I was hurting myself, whether it was hurting myself physically or hurting myself through drinking or not sleeping for days on end because I was off my tits. Like, all these different things. There was only one way I was going to end, because the thing for me, mate, right, is people, you know, when you're in your teens, your 20s, your early 20s and that, you know, going out on a weekend, you work all week, and then Friday, Saturday, you go out, Sunday, you recover, you go back to work. But for me, that party never stopped. Like, I just kept going Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I would just join everyone else on the weekend, and it would just be constant. If you do that and you don't find a reason to stop, I think there's only one way you end up, particularly if you've got, because you're not doing it because it's fun. You're doing it because you're trying to not deal with real life, or you don't want to deal with your real feelings and your real anxieties and stuff. But sorry, yeah. So you asked me about crash. So yeah, me and my missus got married in 2008 in May the 8th, actually, which is 2 days time, 17th wedding anniversary. We got married. 2 weeks later, we were going to the Mighty Boosh Festival. It was me, my missus, my brother, and my cousin in the car going up for the weekend to Kent, to Hop Farm. And we were driving up there, and, you know, happily Larry or whatever. And I was in the middle lane, and this lorry sort of swerved out in front of me and then saw me at the last minute. So he kind of went back in. So I went into the outside lane and was like, oh, I don't know if he's fallen asleep or he's drunk, or, you know, didn't know what was going on, but he had swerved in front of us. So I went into the outside lane and just went sort of to go away from him, sort of thing. But where we were, it was like not a hill, but like it was just like a bit of a hump in the road where you sort of go up and then down. And when you went up and down, there'd been a crash further up, and all the traffic had come to a stop. But obviously I was in the outside lane, and it was just a 5, 6, 7 car pileup. And actually, the second worst thing in my life happened that day as well. So my missus's head went through the windscreen. She was pregnant with my youngest son. Her head went through the windscreen, but throughout that journey, because she was pregnant, she had been taking her seatbelt off and on because she wasn't comfortable. Her hips were playing up. Luckily, she had her seatbelt on when we had the crash. So I kind of was checking on her, and she had blood all over her face, and we were all at that point felt all right, like to a certain extent. Like there was, you know, it wasn't like there was anything, or what we thought at the time, anything particularly serious, you know, cuts and bruises. Went to the car in front of us, which we'd obviously gone into the back of and been sandwiched between another car. And there was a woman sat in the back of that car, and she was cradling a kid of about, I don't know, I like 8, 9, something like that. And mate, I thought he was dead. And for that split second was the single worst feeling of my, like, it was horrible. And it was like literally like probably like that. But if you played it back, it was probably so quick that you would think, like, the human brain, you wouldn't even have time to have any thoughts. But it was like slow motion, right? And I thought he was dead, but he was fine. He moved, and they got out of the car and stuff. We went up to the hospital, got my missus checked out and stuff. And I was just like a bit sore. My back was sort of hurting. So this is like, what, June, I think, July, something like that. So it's like literally a few weeks after we got married anyway. And so we were up in Kent. I didn't want to drive home. I'd only been driving, I think, 2 years. Maybe not even that. And So I didn't want to drive home because I've been in this massive crash. Like, so obviously you're in shock and all the rest of it. My missus doesn't drive. My brother, we found out, was not old enough to hire a car because you've got to be 25 or 21 or whatever. So he couldn't drive. And my cousin was all even younger again, so he couldn't drive. So I had to drive. So we kind of hired a car. We were up there for the weekend, so we went back to the hotel and whatever. And then the Monday or the Tuesday, whenever I went back to work, just gone into work, sat at my desk, typing away as you do. And I kind of got up, and my leg and my hip just had this like shooting pain, and my leg sort of gave way briefly, and I was like, oh, that's weird. But I was still quite sore. So that was like June, July. That got progressively worse. By the September, I woke up one morning in September of 2008, and I had literally no feeling from my hip to my toe in my right leg at all. Nothing, completely dead. And my back was obviously killing. And yeah, then it's like a big long story really after that, because I had 5 years of crutches, wheelchair, my missus washing me, dressing me, feeding me, basically had to do everything for me, whilst we also had a baby, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. We haven't really got a massive family either.
Obviously, I know how much you think of Beck, and I think obviously everybody who watches you regular knows, your feelings towards Mrs. Willis. But how, in that, looking back as you can obviously do now, how did it make you feel being in that situation? And you had to depend on her to, like you said, work, look after the kids, look after you. How did that, as a man, was that a tough time?
Mate, yeah, that 5 years is possibly, it's weird, right? Because in one hand, I got to spend so much time with my kids, like more than I would have if I'd been going to my 9 to 5 every day. But on the other hand, I couldn't do anything with them. We had to move my bed downstairs, got a stair lift in the house, and all these different things. And it is my opinion that 90% of women, and this is not a dig at women, it's just we had been married a month, but at most, and suddenly we'd gone from both having good jobs, planning holidays, kids, the rest of it. We got, we had 2, we've got 1 on the way, had all these plans, just got married. And then suddenly she's having to wash me, dress me, feed me, go to work, look after the 3 babies, doesn't drive, all these things. It is my opinion that 90% of women would have left in that 5-year period because it would have been too much. And that's not a dig, like that's not like an anti-women thing. It's just, it was so unbelievably difficult for her that not everybody would be able to cope with that pressure. And I don't really know how she did it. But you asked me how I felt, mate. It's funny because it's not funny, but that's how Ace Podcast Nation was born, was because I was just waiting to die. And I was getting to the point where no matter how much I had in terms of my family and my wife and all the positives that I still had in my life, I was a burden. I was in pain 24/7. It wasn't going out. I had no one really. I just was waiting to die. And then obviously podcasts was kind of born out of that after I had surgery. So 5 years later, very long story, so I'll kind of cut it short. But effectively, when I went into the hospital in that September, I was in hospital for 2 weeks. They did every scan under the sun on my back and my hips. After the 2 weeks, they gave me crutches and a shitload of morphine and said, we can't find anything wrong. do physio twice a week and you'll be fine. So I did what they told me to do. I did physio twice a week for a year. And it was only 5 years later, because I was still on crutches, still taking more and more morphine. I was falling downstairs, falling over because I was my body wasn't working. I saw my Crohn's doctor, who'd known me since I was 16. And he just went, "Why are you still like this?" And I went through everything. And he said, "Right, I want you to go and see this rheumatologist in Landock." First thing he did was say, can you do this? I want you to go for this scan on your back. And I said, well, I've already had that scan when I first went into the hospital. And he said, yeah, but the first scan you had on your back, like the main lower part of your back, was blurred. So you can't see if there's any damage. So anyway, I did the scan again. And it turns out that one disc had drained empty, and another disc was completely compressed on the nerve, which was obviously causing the lack of feeling and stuff and the pain. But because I had fallen over so much, fallen downstairs, done physio twice a week over that 5-year period, I had just done more and more damage to it, and ended up with a lot of permanent nerve damage in my back and my side and my hip. And anyway, I ended up having a few different things to try and get it better. It didn't work. And then I had a spinal fusion in 2008. And in that recovery period was when I worked my bollocks off to get off crutches and wheelchair and into using a walking stick so that I could have a bit of independence and do stuff for myself effectively, which was obviously life-changing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's mad, isn't it, when you listen to the story, and we've all used to seeing you behind a computer screen, and you don't realise what goes on behind closed doors, do you? But it sounds like obviously when Ace Podcast Nation was born, it was that purpose. We all need a purpose in life, and I know you had it with the kids and your wife, but obviously that Ace Podcast Nation was you a little baby then, shall we say, and it gave you something to sink your teeth into when perhaps you couldn't go back to work in your normal job type of thing.
Yeah, it was just something which I had kind of wanted to do for ages, and then eventually it was weird. I had wanted to do it for a while, and I had my mate had invited me to do something. He's I can't remember. He's like the boss man at Fightful.com. He doesn't own it, but he runs it. And I had done a podcast with them.
It's a good plug that is as well, by the way.
No, they don't need my business, mate. They're fucking massive. But I did a podcast with him and loved it. And then I kind of put it off for another year. Just had this idea. I wanted to do a channel which just did a podcast of loads of different series. And just one day it was in bed in the night. I said, all right, I'm doing it. And I just set up the YouTube channel and then just did it the next morning, just recorded a podcast, started doing these cringeworthy teasers on my Facebook, and it just grew and grew. And it is what it is now. It's a whole company thing, which has got offshoots and other channels and production and editing. And I don't know, mate. It's it's mad because everything which I do is self-taught as well.
Yeah. And you've had some spin-offs on the radio and things as well, and which is all great, eh?
Yeah, it's mad, mate. I obviously I only started doing radio really in the last year or so. And I did that because I wanted to do something outside my comfort zone. I had the opportunity to do a couple of little things for TV. And all these opportunities came off the back of doing the YouTube stuff. And, the Cardiff channel has been a game changer. And it fits with everything which I want to do. I wish I'd done it earlier, but, it is what it is, isn't it? I think, for a long time, I did the Cardiff content on this channel. My one regret with the YouTube stuff is the last probably 6 months, I've pretty much abandoned Ace Podcast Nation because Cardiff City World has taken up so much of my time. I just haven't had that time to do it. But obviously, we've got plans with you're doing this series. We've got the Rebel Voices series on the music come in. I've got some football content come in. There's some other bits and pieces. Got a podcast with Leroy Brittle. So there is stuff coming. It's just I haven't got the time. I need a fucking editor is what I need.
If anybody out there is looking to do some editing content, get in touch with Si. You can get in touch with me. Get in touch with Ace Podcast Nation on the social media platforms. Very quickly then, Si, before I know we're running over time. You've mentioned it briefly there. Obviously, you struggle with Crohn's. How much of an impact does that have on your life, and mentally, how draining can that be?
Do you know what? With like Crohn's, what I find the most draining about it is every time I feel all right, it'll just hit me like a train. One of the biggest issues I have with it generally is just being exhausted. Like I really struggle. I'm tired all the time. So the last 18 months, 2 years, I've had these injections. These days, like biological medication, which I like an EpiPen, which I inject into my leg every 2 weeks. They were game changers, like real game changers. That's really improved my day-to-day life with Crohn's. But the last like 6 weeks or so has been stressful because what I thought was like a Crohn's flare-up it's become clear as not. And yeah, we'll see how that pans out. Is all I'll say with that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the question because I know obviously you take pride in your work, and obviously you have been open and honest. And in the last couple of weeks, you've been told you've got to take it easy, and you find it very difficult to take it easy. But I know you like to fulfill what you've said to the people of, like, especially Cardiff City World, when you said there'll be content out 7 days a week. I think, myself and the guys notice as, and we'll do all we can to help and support you type of thing. And I think, again, going back to that community thing that you created, I think it's great now that we've got that, group of individuals who can help you out if needed. Like,
yeah, I didn't listen to that, mate. Sorry, I was reading something. I was reading Jeff's comment. I don't know what you said.
I was just saying, obviously, the last couple of weeks it's been difficult for you, but it's good that you've got people who can kind of help and support you now from that community that you've created.
Yeah, it's been massive, mate. I do find it hard to take time off and stuff like that. So having like yourself and Rob and Rhys and Evans joined as well, and Pan and Jamie and stuff do stuff as well. And it's I can't, like, if it wasn't for you lot, I'd be doing it literally 7 days a week. So, but look, I just want to keep growing it, and then we'll see what happens in it. But yeah.
We'll finish off then, right? If there's one person watching tonight, what bit of advice could you give them if they've gone through anything that perhaps you might have gone through? A little bit of advice maybe you could give them.
Be honest with yourself. Because if you're not honest with yourself, you're never gonna deal with it. Because I think, like we talked about earlier, like I kidded myself for years that I didn't have a drink problem or that I didn't have issues that I needed to deal with. And it's hard because when you're honest with yourself, it's generally going to be not pleasant, isn't it? Like, you're not going, God, I'm fucking awesome. Like, you're going to be looking at holes in your game, shall we say. But I think if you can be honest with yourself about whatever it may be, whether it's substance, whether it's your mental health, whether it's addiction, whatever it is, like, if you can be honest with yourself, then you can start to deal with it.
And to finish us off, are you happy now? You're in a good place type of thing mentally, or you still have your days perhaps?
All right, I still have my mate. I honestly, like, if it wasn't for my missus makes me laugh every day, which helps. Especially if I'm a bit grumpy, she'll kind of do something which makes me laugh. Having cats has been good, which is really hurts me to say. But after my dog died, like, my youngest son somehow convinced us to get cats, and we got these 3 cats, and that has helped. And my mate Gareth, like, we do keep each other going, like, a lot. So I appreciate him a lot, and I appreciate, like, you guys. I appreciate, mate, you wouldn't believe how many just random people just message me and just go, how are you? How's your health? How are you doing? You're all right? Do you need anything? And I'm talking like 50 plus people a week, just random people. And I don't mean random in a disrespectful way. I just mean people who aren't in my day-to-day life. Just will send a message over, like, and I can't say how much I appreciate that. And I will just quickly say, so many people have messaged me over the last 2 weeks. I will respond, like, eventually, but it's just like there's so many of them. It's very overwhelming, and I'm obviously trying to sort my physical health out as well as best I can. But I am pretty good, mate. Like, you know, I love spending time with my missus. I love doing the podcasts and stuff like that. My kids are all doing their own kind of thing a lot of the time. I love coaching my boys' football team
as well. Sorry, I know we keep going on, and you mentioned earlier about you want
my missus is going to kill you. You know, I think
she loves me really. Just tell her to kick her slippers off and walk around the living room with that thing on her feet. You've got to be proud of the boys, what they've gone into. I'm not going to discuss what they've gone into, but you've got to look back, and especially given the journey you went on through that particular age, and how it perhaps could have gone that way for you boys, to see how they've gone on and progressed, and that must make you obviously very proud as well.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing, mate. Like, being a dad is my favorite thing, and like, it was hard, particularly for my oldest one, because he's got really bad ADHD, and he's he was old enough to have to deal with what was going on with my physical health, and then probably my mental health. Like, he was old enough to notice, and I think that was hard for him, as well as dealing with having ADHD and having issues around that. And they've all had some issues, but they've all grown up to be real inspiring men. And I think hopefully the younger one now, who's doing his exams, he's got his first one this week, hopefully he can do
tell well. Him not to worry about his exams, just keep banging goals in on a weekend, he'll be right then.
Yeah, we got some good stuff coming on the football as well, because we're changing club and stuff, so that's going to be fun.
Well, he goes up to senior football now. When does he?
Youth football. He's already playing a bit of seniors and youth football anyway.
But, sorry, apologies for keeping you later than.
No, you're right, mate. I'm
You'll have to apologise to Beck for me, but
I'm going to go pick him up now.
Thanks for coming on and sharing your story, shall we say? I think we should have Becky come on now and do number 3, really, and she can.
Mate, I've tried. I suggested to her that me and her do a podcast on a members show, just like me and her do one, because I think it would be really funny. But because we got a bit of a strange relationship, I think, for some people. Sometimes I look when we're setting up for the live events, and I see people like looking and like, what? Because we're like not snapping at each other, but we're like going backward, sort of bantering back and forth, but it's all love.
Yeah. Top man. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody who've watched as well in the comments. If you do want to support Ace Podcast Nation, obviously we've got the branch off channel Cardiff City World as well. You can check that out on YouTube. Search Cardiff City World, Ace Podcast Nation. You can join and become a Patreon member of Ace Podcast Nation. Go on Patreon / I think is Ace Podcast Nation in it. And if you want to join the Cardiff City YouTube, join the army of fans that's supporting that. It's going from strength to strength every week. For the price of a cup of coffee a month, you can join and support the channel that way. But last off, if anybody's struggling with anything that's been discussed during tonight's broadcast, Signposted Cymru, there's details going across the bottom of the screen as we speak. Get in touch with the team there, and they'll do all they can to help you as soon as possible. Little logo up in the top corner there as well. Darren was on the first show that I done on this series. Great, inspiring bloke, and it's great to have him as part of the team and there to help, if anybody needs to. So thank you very much to Darren, and keep up the good work. Si, once again, thank you very much, my friend, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you for having me on, mate. Cheers, mate.